Society session at the Queen's University of Belfast Literary and Scientific Society! Last one and I couldn't even get through it. Can you believe that? Oh well. For some odd reason, as I stand here now, I'm reminded of the story about the last president before the disbandment. I'm not entirely sure why, but I'm sure it will become relevant later on. Well, here we are. Out of time at the end of the line. It's the last debate of the 169s. I want to thank all of you for being here this evening to send the session out with what I'm sure will be thunderous applause. Before we begin, I'd like to take just a few minutes to talk to you. I know we're running late, but I would certainly.
You're at your presently at the moment. This is only your HTTP. Should be access tonight or into the side location. Okay? So please transition to this so we get you.
Yes, will do. We shall direct them accordingly. So anyway, as hopefully many of you saw, all of the photos taken throughout the second semester were released onto Facebook over the Easter break. The eagle-eyed among you who looked through them may have noticed that in all of the group photographs, apart from looking like a complete idiot, of course, I'm doing some variation of this stance. My hands out. I've been asked a couple of times why I do so. Does it mean come join us or something like that? Well, what I intend for to me is, do you see this? The society has changed a lot since I joined in the autumn of 2013. It's had good years and it's had bad. And for those of us who've been around long enough to see them all or close to, the consensus is that the 165th session in 2013-2014 was the best of them all. The president that year was a man I've mentioned a great few many times now, Adam Kidd. No one who was a member of 165th had a bad word to say about him. His presence at the front of the room each week was incomparable, and for a fellow like me who was woefully inept at public speaking, it was what kept me coming back each week. I never really saw the refounder, eternal leader Paul Shannon in action, nor his successor, Andrew Carruthers. So I can't really speak to the authorial intent with regards to what the society is meant to be. But I did see Adam Bradley. Throughout this year, I have always tried to follow his example. What he achieved, what he stood for, who he was. To make something I thought he would be proud of, and to do for all of you what he did for me. I know that despite my best efforts, I still wasn't even half present he was. So when I stood for the photograph each week with my hands like this, I wasn't just asking the viewer, do you see this? I was reminding myself that a great many people were watching this society to see what it would become. And that people who saw, that what people saw might be remembered for years to come. So this needed to be good. So look back on the year, and what do you see? I see 24 ordinary debates and 6 special ones. I see joint debates of 11 societies or institutions, and 9 guest chairs. I see a return to storming, consistently higher turnout, and record-breaking download figures for the recordings. I see strengthened ties to our heritage, with a more faithful society crest, as can be seen on the banner. The rediscovery of the original one, which has of course now been repurposed. Bryson. Seal of the president. The discovery of minutes previously thought to be lost. The creation of a way to keep in contact with our RAF members. The creation of a list of all our debates since the refounding. Our inclusion in the Landing History Wall. Gaining the right of return to our ancestral home, the McMorty Hall. And most importantly, of course, the return of Shame Resign, a forbidden love story. Looking not to the past but instead the future, I see the massive changes we made to the very fabric of the society. Constitutional amendments, the codified practices for tie-breaking and postal voting, and a new member of the Trust. The effects of these actions Well, for years to come.
I thought you were saying that for later.
Oh. Finally, to the present day. Or I suppose the day just passed. We sent more teams to more competitions than ever before. We hosted training days for the first ever World Schools Debating Championship NI team. We hosted the Irish National Games for the first time. We hosted the final of the Irish County Debating for the first time.
Please stop it.
It was funny at first, now I'm scared.
We got the student newspaper with a gown back into print. Got ourselves some lovely little lapel pins. And had our biggest Christmas dinner and end of year formal yet. To say all of this is just to scratch the surface of this year. And so I see a society that is bigger than ever, that is more welcoming than ever, and that is better than ever. And every quality society, no matter how big or how small, how rich or how poor, how old or how young, is only as good as its members. And you should all be immensely proud. But you know what else I see? This was only the beginning. With the end of the 169 and the beginning of the 170th, the society will experience not only a very literal change, but an equally important symbolic one. An end to the beginning of the Sessions 160 and the start of a bold, bright new era, Sessions 170. No more leaders who've been here the whole time, or near enough. No more reliance on the conventional wisdoms of the past, and no more being beholden to the opinions of a long since departed membership. Think bigger, work harder, debate smarter. Your council, your new council, is the best I've ever seen. There's no question, no comparison, no competition. Give them your full support, and as sure as I stand here, you will be repaid tenfold. They will make the events of this year look like mere parlour tricks before a display of real magic. The society will see dark days again. It's inevitable. But next year will not be one of them. And when they do come back, remember what we achieved this year, what we stood for, who we are, and you will ensure that the best is still yet to come. And who knows, perhaps you, the quiet person who always sits at the back, who can barely get a POI without tripping over their words twice, who doesn't really know anyone, who's standing where I am 5 years from now, I have no doubts that every one of you is capable. That I was afforded the honour of holding this office, and can I stand with and talk to its other great holders as an equal. It's been the greatest pleasure and privilege of my life, and I can't thank all of you enough for it. I want to tell you on behalf of the presidents of the past, Paul Shannon, Andrew Carruthers, Alan Kidd, Tara Foriaha, Mary Louise Smith, Benjamin Murphy, and of course, myself. Yeah, there, something just fell out. That when we look back on the early days of this place, of what it used to be, you'll really make us immensely proud. Now go and make us prouder. So that's it. All my friends have long since moved on, and I think it's finally time I follow after them. The sacred torch has been passed, and its last fleeting embers have left my hands. The society is no longer yours to inherit, it's just yours. Now it begins. Now it's over. Now it's your turn!
Theatrics, isn't it? So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to what I will incorrectly call the first special meeting of the 170th session of the Literary and Scientific Society at Queen's University, Belfast. It actually... since we're at the end of the year and we're very pressed for time, there really aren't any. So, but since I got my big round of applause, I'll just take this time to, since I got my hefty applause, we should extend congratulations to the rest of the 178th Council. First to our Secretary, Mr. Matthew Bradley. To the unfortunately absent Treasurer, Mr. Shay Glasgow. To our Internal Convener, Matthew Bryson. External Convener, Ms. Tara Grace Conley. Outreach Officer, Ms. Chloe Ferguson. Technology Officer, Jake Kieran. Training Officer, Russell Nairn. Last but not least, Mr. Social Officer Edmund Doherty. We are running far behind schedule, so I'll stop the announcements there and welcome Mr. Peter Dunn to give the minutes for the last debate, which I actually can't remember. That's okay.
So I'm not exactly sure how anybody meant to follow, but I'll try my best. So for the last time, the minutes. The annual Duffering competition, which was the 23rd ordinary meeting of this, the Literary and Scientific Society, took place on the 22nd of March and was attended by 33 members. The President greeted everybody with that very excitable entrance, which you've all come to love or perhaps loathe throughout the year. The House then allowed the President to indulge himself for 2 minutes. He had a fantastic idea for asking for messages from absent friends at the Convention. So lots of lovely ex-presidents and people had very nice things to say to us all. The President then had another announcement. Council had voted upon the decision that Justice Bernard McCluskey would be removed from the Trust due to its, let's say, laid-back approach to work. Which replacement we have deemed the fantastic Reverend Dr. Paul Bailey. More than suitable for all his enthusiasm and active interest in society, is usually more perfect for ever so prestigious post. He's also just a top lad. A vote was taken and the decision was accepted overwhelmingly, except for one person. The President also deemed it appropriate. And the President then introduced the motion for the evening. This House believes Antifa are more dangerous than the white nationalist movements, which met with lots of interested oohs around the room. Private members' business was then begun with an official message from the Treasury. Mr. John MacDonald muttered some boring things about people in ivory towers, saying that growth in our economy was on target, and he was apparently doing good things. Dr. Craig, obviously feeling himself getting fairly aroused at Mr. MacDonald's comments, supported. Meanwhile, the President of the Labour Society, Mr. Chris Hubbard, did some sassy socialist things in response and claimed that personal debt had been. Dr. Craig, I think we can all admit one of the quietest men in our humble society, decided he wanted to know the opinion of the House on the criminal conviction of Mark Meakin for training his dog to perform an anti-salute. Mr. Russell, our connoisseur of humour here at Little Pig, said yes, the supposed joke was firstly offensive and secondly in no way humorous, but it is not a matter that should have resulted in a criminal conviction. Social Officer Mr. Connolly said that although it may seem ridiculous, laws against hate speech are there for a reason and we should respect them. Right, back to the bit that I have to move. The President then deemed it appropriate to only give one President question, in an obvious attempt to save himself from the humiliation that he's received week upon week from the House. Mr. Jeff Patton was thus prized with this unenviable task of trying to embarrass the President. But instead, he was very safe. He just asked a question regarding the lack of the Four Seasons of Brick and Mortar, which was met by a suitably uninteresting answer. A vote on prior opinion was then taken, which read 5 in favour, 9 against, and 30. The lovely Miss Emma Prativatis opened the case to the proposition. In starting her speech, she explained the importance of taking into account the context of the broken, divided world that we all live in. Nice, optimistic start to proceedings. The central premise of her argument rested on the way in which Antifa's tactics in achieving their goals, where she argued were measurably worse than the white nationalist movements. Miss Kira Swale opened the case for the opposition. She began by defining exactly who they meant by white nationalist movements. Not just the alt-right, but apparently those lovely neo-Nazi bunch too, who were far bigger in number and used worse methods than Antifa, she claimed. It was important too that the House considered the nature of each organisation. Antifa, despite using questionable tactics, at least have a progressive goal, that of anti-fascism. Honorary Life Member Mr. Kieran Gallagher then continued the case of the proposition. Being the Deputy Prime Minister, as we're running on British parliamentary style, proclaimed that he didn't want to be knighted to Dodge for some reason. He argued the premise of the debate was whether that violence against violence could actually solve anything. Surprise, surprise, Mr. Gallagher maintained that it couldn't. Furthering his case, he claimed that we can also not be too sympathetic, because it isn't just the right wing that has the potential to be fascist. The left-wing fascist organisation was clearly evidence. It was a big moment for the President-elect, Mr. Fidel, as this was quite possibly the last time he would give a 7-minute speech. Sad reaction. Continuing to the opposition, in questioning what kind of world or in fact debating society we live in when we were questioning who was worse than the Nazis. And yes, he had no problem with comparing white nationalists to Nazis, arguing that it was essential for aims of the organisation to take it into consideration. The debate, Antifa, well, by questionable means, do support a progressive sentiment, that of anti-fascism, unlike the nationalist groups who can do. Mr. James Beckett was third at the proposition. He questioned what fascism and Antifa were actually fighting in America, one of the most respected and renowned democracies in the world. Thus, Antifa, he stated, wasn't furthering progressive politics in any meaningful manner, attacking the University of Bradford and vowing to burn down cities could, surprisingly enough, in no way, shape or form be construed as being positive, he asserted. And it was this that he rests his case for the opposition. External convener-elect, Ms. Tara Grace Cunley, was third of the opposition. She refuted the claims that just because perhaps there has been less violent action that can be directly attributed to the white nationalist movement, that in itself does not make them less dangerous. She argued that white nationalists normalise racist and regressive ideology, from music festivals to stupid camps. Thus, their detrimental effect on society is much greater than any isolated incidents of violence. Honorary Life Member Mr. Matthew Sullivan rounded up the arguments of the proposition in his usual passionate and flamboyant manner. Antifa, he claimed, are a universally violent organisation who detrimentally affect wider society and the progressive movement as a whole. The notion of purely attacking someone just because of their ideology, a notion which Antifa supports, is ultimately damaging and destroys the core message of left-wing progressive politics. In conclusion, he stated Antifa are both dangerous in the immediate effects of their actions and the long-term effects of pushing people to the right. He claimed, and thus vowed people to vote for the proposition. Closing the debate was Mr. J. Carey, who began his speech by commending all speakers. He's just that kind of guy. He questioned that just because Antifa aren't good at the job, does it really mean that they're more dangerous? Antifa on the ground, he stated, are much less dangerous, while the nationalists that have been associated with several killings. He argued Antifa didn't get the mainstream recognition, while white nationalists do, where there's serious connections with the Republican Party. And thus he pleaded that from both an ideological and cultural standpoint, the House should reject the motion. Questions were then heard from Mr. Jeff Matham, Mr. John MacDonald, Mr. Chris Hubble, Mr. Alton McSparrow, and for the last time, Mr. Rupert Doherty, Mr. Conor O'Neill. And then a vote was taken on speakerability, which were at 7-4, 10 against and 12 abstentions. Mr. Leavetta HM then gave some closing remarks, ramping up, before announcing that the wonderful honorary life member, Mr. Matthew Sullivan, was crowned as this year's winner of that annual different competition. May I take this?
So, shall now move on to a brief round of private members' business. As I'm sure you all know, this is the part of the evening where we talk about anything in the news or in the world that we want to discuss. So, I'll go first to Mr. Matthew Sullivan, HLN.
Alright, so, as I'm sure probably everybody is at this point aware, there was a while ago a chemical weapons attack in Syria orchestrated by their government against their people. And in response to this, a coalition of United States, United Kingdom, and France launched airstrikes against, I believe it was 3 key centres of chemical weapons research and production in Syria. The question then is, Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the opposition, was rather vocal against this, saying that while it's perfectly fine to carry out these attacks, Theresa May really should have consulted Parliament before engaging in what are essentially acts of war against the country. So, the motion I'd like to propose is that Theresa May should have consulted Parliament before engaging in these airstrikes on Syria.
Okay. And if anyone has their thoughts, I'm going to go to Mr. Hickman.
So I'm going to do a brief point about law, and then I promise I won't be boring. It's kind of, it is something that's kind of come up through from the kind of years of Tony Blair, that military action engagement in other countries generally has authorization from Parliament. It is, however, not a requirement, and I think that we should be discussing this as a political question as to whether or not there was support for it generally, not whether a matter of legislative question whether or not Parliament specifically supported it.
Okay. And next to Mr. MacDonald.
America turns around to me, all holding the phone and says, look, something terrible has happened in Syria. We've got evidence that Assad is using chemical weapons against his own people. Let's have harsh strikes against military bases there. France says, yeah, let's do it. Theresa May says, no, I've got to go through Parliament to make sure everything's okay. No. What Theresa May did in Syria was, by going to Parliament, we would have risked our operation. We would risk it's not legal. Sorry, it's not illegal for the Theresa May did. It was perfectly legal. And she should not have to go to Parliament. She didn't strikes. It is not a full scale.
Going to allow one more point just before we take it to a vote. Mr. Hubble, so we can get a different viewpoint on it.
There's not a legal requirement for motion. There is a moral requirement. When we are going to a foreign country and bombing, we are not at risk. This is intervention in a foreign country that could have severe consequences. America has already tried to do this sort of form of military sanction before, where we bomb them and try and it hasn't worked. We have no clear plan. When we are not at risk, then Parliament should be consulted and we should be discussing proper form. Otherwise, this is how we lead to disastrous wars and an unstable region for years to come.
I have to call over very shortly. So, and Mr. Sullivan, if you're happy with the motion that is, this House believes Theresa May should have consulted Parliament before initiating airstrikes in Syria. So, I'll call to a vote now. All those who be in favour of that motion, this House believes Theresa May should have consulted Parliament, please raise your hands and say aye. Aye. 24?
22. Wouldn't be right my last time.
23? 22, you didn't hear. And all those who would be against raise their hands and say nay. Seven. And would any of those abstaining please raise their hands and say nay.
So that was 22 votes, 7 against.
The motion carries. The motion carries. Ayes have it. So, sorry. If anyone has one more brief piece of private members' business, I'll allow it. Mr. Doherty.
Okay, but to respect that the best film released during Parliament's 6-month session was Black Panther, the best song released, You, Man's Not Hot by Big Shaq, and the best meme is when it won Mr. Bradley Pitts.
I don't think there's a motion in there, but I'm going to ask for a seconder to decide if we want to pursue this.
No.
Very brief round of President's questions then, because I am very conscious of the time. So, I'm going to go to Mr. Clark.
Sir, as it is clear to all, the worst president in the history of this or any society, will you resign?
If I want to. Please complete your point, Mr. Clark.
Will you resign?
I mean, I'm expecting Matthew Bradley to take back the presidency any day now. I have been willing to bring this forward, but I'm ready to admit now, so as you all can know as soon as possible, that I am simply a puppet. Matthew Bradley has had a year-long plan that Bangor Grammar School retains its control of the society, and I am merely one of his pawns. So, one more, Mr. Beckett.
As we are moving forward, Mr. President, into a new age, a brighter age, a better age, which Kardashian do you think is most fit to take over after our Queen resigns, as they're currently debating the Commonwealth Assembly?
No, well, have to. Kind of, but brief, please.
Can we please start finding anybody who mentions the Kardashians?
Would give the president the powers to fine anyone who mentions the Kardashians or anybody directly related to the Kardashians from this point forward.
Security or definitely keep us out of the street. Okay, I'm not allowing anyone to have a piece on this, but a vote was seconded. We really need to get moving, so I'll simply have a vote. And I'm sure everyone's going to forget about this and not enforce it when September comes around anyway.
These are bound in the minutes for eternity.
Bound for eternity. Two. Right, we need to get cracking on here. All those who are in favour of fining someone anytime the Kardashians are mentioned, please raise their hand and say aye. Aye. Otherwise we'll be here for ages. Anyone who has no opinion whatsoever, and feel free to change your vote if you want, please raise your hand and say red. You feel it? Right. I don't know what we do if there's a tie on these things.
I say we forget most of what happened.
Right. I'm sure we can call motions like that during President's questions anyway. But moving on to the prior opinion vote, the motion for this evening is. What? Oh no, sorry, no, you're not. Okay. Next. The motion for this evening. I reiterate, this is just a vote on how we feel coming into the debate today, what our opinions are. This is a non-binding vote. So for the motion that is, this House believes that the Republic of Ireland has sold out on NI. All those in favour, please raise their hands and say aye. Aye. And we also please raise their hands and say nay.
Majority of the propositions.
7, 8, yeah. And all those abstaining, please once again raise your hands and say nay.
Just gonna name it Jesus. Us.
17. And would you read that book back to me, please, Mr. Secretary?
That was 16 votes for the motion, 8 against.
The abstentions have it on the prior opinion vote, so. Sorry. Moving on to the main debate of this evening, I'd first like to welcome Mr. Finbar Rogers, HLM, to speak for the proposition.
Who's that? Okay. Where am I? Ladies, gentlemen, and alliance voters. There was an article in a recent edition of the Irish Times which commented that the main tenets of the Constitution of the Republic of Ireland the main tenets all carried with them an invisible knot, such as the former Article 2, which held the national territory consists of the island of Ireland, its islands, and the territorial seas. Not. The sovereign commitment to that same principle, as far as there, has been little more than the sort of wrap the green flag round me boys type of nationalism, which is generally on display outside the Hatfield on a Friday night and inside Kelly Cellars on a Saturday. Sovereign leaders of the last century with a genuine commitment to Northern Ireland, or the North, as it was actually called at one point, can all be counted on one hand. And so it's necessary for me here to lay a few bricks of historical groundwork. Russell will then concentrate on the social-political wainscoting, and I believe Craig will hang a few drapes and just make the kettle on, put the kettle on after the motion. So, thinking of 1922 and where this whole thing started. There was I was reading in Dave Kennedy's book, Unhappy in the Land. He wrote that not only was partition not likely before 1922, but it was also, not only was it not inevitable, it was also not likely at all. Just as today, from the Gap of the North to the Lindenhall Library, and all that they represent, the 6 counties that we're talking about were an inextricable part of the country. And the grand scope of Irish history. Demonstrated in some way by when partition was established, border communities such as Newry, Derry and Tyrone, which had been some of the most active parts of the War of Independence, refused to recognise the new state and pledged allegiance to Dáil Éireann, which funded schools in those areas for a while until it very promptly ran out of money. And then they were, in a large part, made stateless. During the War of Independence, the Republican leaders, all sovereign-based, had decided to focus on independence and the obtainment of a republic, and therefore had just not really thought about the North, but largely demonstrated by Eamon de Valera's opinion on unionists, which from one day to day would even range from, they're just being silly, they don't really mind independence, to, well, if they feel that's only about it, they can just go home. So that has largely been how the North has been fought over, and nationalists in that little corner have largely been ignored. And then, at the same time, as partition, the South was largely embroiled in a bitter civil war, which it was referred to in some parts of Munster primarily as the Troubles. And so when the Troubles started here, they were sorry? Yeah, sure.
And we're aware of the history of the Republican state or the Free State, but can we get into the crux of this matter here? Not once have we mentioned the formation of the Republic of Ireland state or the state of Northern Ireland relations.
I just mentioned it there, actually.
Or how we're getting into how they have actually sold.
I get the point. I just mentioned it. I just mentioned the formation of the state there. And pay attention. So when the Troubles started here, there was largely a thought of the memories of the Civil War were very much prevalent in the South, which shaped their unwillingness to involve themselves in mind, body, or spirit. A century of conflict and the image of a line in the country later cemented itself within the stubborn mind and created that sort of view of the Nordies. Another article in the Irish Times talked about how they have Irish customs which don't really seem to be Irish, and British customs which don't really seem to be British, in such a way that some of us wouldn't quite understand. And yet, in spite of this, the North, it's striking when you consider the history of partition in the 20th century, and how little that had happened in Ireland, especially compared to India, Pakistan, or Northern Korea land, which set in motion such a cultural shift that eradicated the countries that came before to the largest possible degree. Whereas Northern Ireland has largely managed to save itself from that and maintain some sense and semblance of its Irishness in a much greater way than Dublin has, which was a part of Ireland far more affected by partition. Once known as the Pale and later as the second city of the Empire, Dublin is definitely an English city, and makes little sense to see the Irish flag flying off its Georgian buildings. And so, to answer the point you were getting at, wasn't colouring the details of the South. Advice?
Speech and follow up Mr. Killian Gordon to speak first for the opposition.
Mr. Laughlin, Irish ROI. Thank you, Mr. President, and a very good evening. It's a great pleasure to open the argument tonight for the opposition, and to make the argument that the Republic of Ireland has not sold out on the North. I'll make a number of points that my colleagues will continue to elaborate on. I will discuss the modern relationship and not just give a brief history of the Republican state. And I will also explain how the relationship between those two states have developed. Let me make one thing absolutely clear. We are not admitting that the relationships and the attitudes towards the north of Ireland is ideal from the Republic. Nor could it be the best that they can be. But to say that the Republic has sold out on the North is an outrageous statement. It may come to surprise you that I'm an Irishman. I am an Irishman living in the part of this great and beautiful island. And it is my strong belief that the Republic has not sold out on the North. It is very important that we, as the opposition, clarify that this is about the relationship of the two states and not the relationship of its people. Building on this, we are talking in the context of the formation of the nation state. The Free State of Ireland in 1922 through the partition of Ireland, of this island. Throughout the years, we have seen continuous involvement of the Irish government within the affairs of the North. It started with the Sunningdale Agreement in 1973, with the involvement of the Irish government in cooperation with the pro-agreement parties and the British government to establish a devolved government. But to establish also the Cross-Border Council of Ireland as an all-Ireland law legislative authority or jurisdiction, initially covering Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland.
Can the seriousness of the Sunningdale Agreement and the Councils of Ireland which it established be measured by their resounding success?
Absolutely not, but I'm going on to what the Sunningdale eventually led on to, which is the Good Friday Agreement. After Sunningdale, we had the Anglo-Irish Agreement, an agreement between the United Kingdom and the Republic to help end the troubles within the North. Then we move into Belfast, the Good Friday Agreement. Seamus Mallon once famously described it. The Good Friday Agreement is Sunningdale for slow learners. Last week on Tuesday, I had the great pleasure of attending the 20-year celebration of the Good Friday Agreement right here in Queens. We don't have to look no further than to the Good Friday Agreement, a pioneering piece of legislation which transformed the political landscape in the North, enabling peace on this island, which could not have been brought about without the support and backing of the United Kingdom, of the United States, but most importantly for this debate, the Republic of Ireland government.
I feel that the point you're making here is that any interaction that Irish politicians make with the North is in direct attempt to keep it as far away as possible because they're scared of it. They think they're all a bit mad.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think the continuous involvement within the Republic shows their commitment to this part of the island, and I'll continue on for a recent example. If the proposition is to make the argument that the Republic of Ireland has sold out of Northern Ireland, we simply have to look at the Irish state and the continuing work that they are putting into the Good Friday Agreement, unlike some of the parties in the North. And indeed, the peace process and the continuing peace process that they are supporting. Last week, speaking at the event, when Taoiseach and Minister for Foreign Affairs, Simon Coveney, expressed that it is the #1 political priority for the Irish government to re-establish the institutions within the North. This clearly shows the commitment and the continued support of the Good Friday Agreement, and as a co-guarantor.
Surely you can see that the sole objective of the Taoiseach right now is to take business that's based in London to Dublin, and how he's messing around with the Brexit negotiations. That's selling out Ireland.
First of all, it's Taoiseach or Taoiseach. Second of all, that has absolutely nothing to do with the Good Friday Agreement. The Good Friday Agreement is about the peace upon this island and about the democratic process on which we can establish the institutions within the North, and the democratic process that the Republic of Ireland can establish a united Ireland. The agreement enshrined within the Constitution of the Republic in Articles 2 and 3 that it is the entitlement birthright of every person in this island of Ireland to be part of the Irish nation, and it is the firm will of the Irish nation in harmony and friendship to unite this island. It also set up the intergovernmental bodies to ensure that the Government of Ireland can continue its key role within the affairs of the North of Ireland and establish an ever-working relationship. Even today we see the commitment of the Irish Government and Brexit negotiations, its commitment of not establishing a hard border on this island and campaigning on behalf of all the interests of the people of this island, not just the residents of the Republic. And Taoiseach Leo Varadkar has said under no circumstances will there be a return to a hard border on this island. Very much more than what Arlene Foster or Sinn Féin is establishing. If we are to move away from political agreements, we can see greater cooperation from the Irish state in an all-Ireland manner. We look at Fónas na Gaeilge, the promotion of Irish language across the island. We look at Intertrade Ireland, promoting enterprise across the island. Now, I may be born in the north of Ireland, and yet I'm an Irish national. I'm born in Northern Ireland, and yet I hold an Irish passport. I'm born in the United Kingdom, but yet I'm learning to speak Irish. We have a complex and complicated relationship between the two states. It's a delicate past, but we must leave this behind into a new Ireland and a new politics. Let me stress, the Republic of Ireland has not sold out on the North. Thank you.
For his speech, and just to make a brief note, we're obviously in the Great Hall. It's a lovely building, lovely corporate, but it has problems with sound, so it's just for the people in the seat at the back. If you're delivering POIs, so just try and project as much as possible so we can all hear the issue at the back. And now I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Training.
Right, so I'm from the south. What even is Northern Ireland? As far as the average citizen in the south is concerned, it's just sort of there, isn't it? Some of you may be deluded into thinking that your average Free Stater likes it. Some may even be deluded into thinking that your average Free Stater hates the North. The sad truth of the matter is that the average Free Stater doesn't even spare a thought for the North. It may be above them on the map, but it is beneath their notice in life. Over the course of this speech, I'm going to focus on how the Republic of Ireland has sold out Northern Ireland from a cultural perspective. I'm going to do this by looking at how it has sold out Northern Ireland in regards to political culture, how it's sold out Northern Ireland in regards to individual culture, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why this is the particular case. First, as a minor point of rebuttal, we know that Trimble recently mentioned at last week's anniversary of Good Friday Agreement. He was talking about the fact that the Anglo-Irish Agreement failed because it didn't work with people who were directly affected by it. The reason the Good Friday Agreement was so successful, according to him, was because that it was brought up from within by civil society within Northern Ireland. So, the vast majority of the South's political culture is terrified of the North. Its politics are scary and divisive, whilst we just get to sort of bugger about them if we like Dev or Collins more. It occasionally gets paid lip service, but the overarching political culture of the South does not want to think about the North and its problems. I mean, let's take a rundown of the main political parties within the South. Fine Gael is functionally a unionist party that wants a United Ireland as much as the DUP. Fianna Fáil is basically the same, but occasionally likes to pay lip service to the idea.
Point of ambition.
Go for it.
Fianna Fáil, the slogan is the Republican Party. The party of aim that they're the anti-treaty party. The party.
I take your point. I take your point.
So no, the party that is one of the most party that is the longest in government.
I take your point, sir. And that is why I'm speaking about the lip service thing. I'm going to speak about the lip service a bit more. Sinn Féin are probably the most keen on the idea, but to be fair, their political philosophy down south boils to look at what the government is doing and say we're going to do the opposite so we can appeal to the young contrarians. And so much like all of their policies, they're not going to really be functionally implementable once they reach government, if they reach government. Labour... That's a good joke. And people before profit just give me stomach ulcers. So, the average politician, when they even think about you at all, thinks that you are too expensive, too politically divided, and a wee bit too scary to concern themselves with you. Some of them like to pretend that ideas like United Ireland are wanted by them, but in reality it is the number one item on their agenda to maintain the status quo. They want to pay enough lip service to the North to satisfy the mildly nationalistic sentiment of their constituents, no thank you, and then shut up so they don't have to actually act upon any of their notions. But what about these constituents themselves? How was the average citizen of the Republic of Ireland sold out North? It's simple. As I've hinted at, they aren't in love with it. They don't even hate it. They simply do not give a half of a buttered crumb about Northern Ireland. Right? No, thank you. The average Southerner thinks you lot are mad. I mean, any of you who've been away to IVs or been to the Irish Times final have seen this in action. The second issues of Northern Irish politics come up, you can see their skin turn pale and the terror rise within their eyes as they glance longingly towards the door, wondering if they can escape before the Northerns catch them. They just don't know anything about it and they don't want to know. I mean, I take a greater interest than most of them, but I don't have the arrogance to claim to be an expert. And even amongst them, they consider me a wee bit mad for having interest. They lump me in with the shinners of all people. It's horrible. Go for it.
You're talking about they don't care, and the political parties don't care, yet Fianna Fáil have made their intentions clear that they will be running the 2019 local government elections up here. So how can you turn around and claim that the parties are only mouthing, when yet the parties are looking to come up here, especially Fianna Fáil, the Republican Party, which wants to unite Ireland?
I'll believe it when I see it. All I'm seeing from them is lip service in these instances. The consistent term I hear amongst my fellow Southerners whenever I talk about these issues is the words, "we don't want them." The entire political culture within the South regarding the North is one of desired ignorance and separation. Most people are more than happy for the North to remain the place where crazy Uncle Davy lives, or the place where Mum goes every few months to do her shopping. And at the current rate of prices increasing, it soon won't even be that. So, why is this? As far as I'm concerned, the Republic has definitively sold out Northern Ireland. But why? To most people, the border is more than just a metaphysical divide on a map. It is a social, cultural, and economic divide. It is where we end and the slightly insane reflection of ourselves begins. And of course, as we all know, this mental divide occasionally takes physical form in the fact that Hurricane Ophelia was seemingly stopped by the Irish border, illustrated many times in various maps. That is, of course, a minor joke, but it illustrates the psychological divide we see within our society. The Republic has sold out Northern Ireland because it has drifted over time and considers itself to be somehow fundamentally different from Northern Ireland. The border is an invisible ocean that cuts us off and makes us perceive ourselves to be intangibly separate. This is going to remain the case until there is either a radical shift in Southern politics or Northern politics become 100 times less scary, divisive, and slightly confusing. And unfortunately, I don't want this to be the case, but considering that the South seems fully committed to perpetuating the current cycle of neoliberal table tennis between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and the North is, well, the North, this isn't going to change anytime soon. The political culture has every interest in maintaining the status quo. The individual culture doesn't even know which direction North is. The Republic of Ireland has undoubtedly sold out Northern Ireland. Thank you very much.
Thank Mr. Mayor for his fine speech and invite Mr. Beckett to continue to give.
Good evening. Good evening. I hope everyone can hear me all right. I must confess before we begin, you'll find me a little bit dishevelled compared to the other debaters tonight. Because I didn't think we were debating anything. It seems so odd to me that we even have this conversation. And I think part of the reason for that is that I spent a long time living in England, and we certainly don't care about the North. So, my immediate question to the proposition tonight is, if Southern Ireland does not care about the North, if the Republic has truly abandoned them, then why on earth haven't they fallen into complete chaos already? Because the British aren't doing it. No, the truth is, we view the North as merely a political tool. We're happy to co-opt the DUP to feed our own parliament. We're happy to kind of say that they're Britain, but frankly, the way we're taught in Britain, even about how your religion works, is lacking. When I came here, even as a theologian, I barely even heard of Presbyterianism. It seemed so bizarre to me. And I must confess that I feel that there is a touch of conspiracy from the proposition tonight. Because if they truly wanted to take over the North, if they wanted the South to unify Ireland, what better way than to lull the British into complacency by saying they don't care at all? This is a typical and long-winded and old tactic. When the first speaker decided to speak about history, it's a ruse. He doesn't care about history, he cares about tomorrow. He cares about Ireland as a unified force. I truly believe this.
On that point, sir, we care far too much about history demonstrated by the Good Friday Agreement negotiations. Jonathan Pyle said that on a good day, the most productive day, they'll get up to about 1900. The reason why Northern Ireland has failed is because Britain doesn't care about it, the South doesn't care about it, but Sinn Féin and the DUP wanted to work just out of spite of each other, or knocking each other up and this sort of cinch.
I mean, that's certainly a convenient way to look at it. I think that ultimately, when we're talking about complicated political rationale, it's unfair to say that the South completely abandons the North. While it may be true that they view the North as a little bit crazy, a little bit weird, the fact is that they're still having conversations about it. The border crossing within the Brexit negotiations matters. It's important to everybody. It's even important to England. To claim that the South doesn't care about these things is lunacy. It's one of the linchpins when we're talking about the debate of leaving the EU.
I think we can quite frankly say the reason the Republic cares about the border is because they don't want a war zone just across from it. If they back down, if they allow a hard border, what we will see here is a reignition of the year-long conflict that we saw for the end of the last century. If the Republic does not support that, it's nothing different to the attitude thing.
So, I mean, this is an interesting one. If the South truly didn't care about the North, why would there be the level of conflict we've seen? If Ireland didn't care about how Northern Ireland was ruled, it didn't care about British intervention in certain ways, then why even have the arguments at all? The South has made it clear that it's quite happy within the European Union, and yet these debates rage on. And when Europe turns around and offers the North, for example, the right to leave the United Kingdom and fully join with Europe, these debates don't simply get a meh. No one abstains. People have opinions, both in the South and again, even in England.
On that point, sir, you must be aware of the ongoing political culture in the South. The average citizen of the South does not care. The ultimate line, as I said in my speech regarding these conversations, is we don't want them anyway. That's the overarching line.
I mean, I simply don't believe you. I think that's the problem. It seems absurd to say that you don't care about your countrymen. It's like somebody in England saying we don't care about Manchester. Yeah, we think that they're smelly and unwashed and you couldn't get a job there if you paid somebody to but we care about Manchester. Not so much Birmingham, but Manchester. The truth is, the proposition wants to give this idea that somehow Ireland is more divided now than it's ever been. But I don't buy that argument. I don't believe it. And I don't think anybody else in this room really does either. And if you are claiming that Ireland is so divided and culturally as an important section, then I ask you to turn to the first speaker of the proposition, who regularly makes jokes about people's religious denominations, or how they view the world, or where they are from, because even those small tidbits, north or south, matter and have a cultural impact. We recognise how we see each other. We recognise what's being shared through the long-running, century-long conflicts, and why it matters. And that's why the Good Friday Agreement matters. It matters because it brought us steps closer to each other. And the South can say what it wants, it can act aloof, but I don't believe that's how people feel.
Yes, you said multiple times that you simply don't believe what the proposition is putting forward, but you've yet to offer a concrete reason why. So my question is why?
Well, I mean, I'd go back to firstly the agreements that have occurred, the arguments and debates, the long-running conflicts about Irish independence, which has included the North. I would go to people I've spoken to in this very room who hate Cromwell because of what happened in the North. We have a shared cultural heritage of kind of hating the English because of what's happened in the North. And if no one cared in the South, if the South truly didn't care, then we wouldn't have the same arguments against the British that occur. They just allow the North to function as is. That's not the case. It's a difficult debate to have because, in some regards, it's slightly absurd. But I'd like you to all consider tonight, whether you're from the South or the North, whether you feel like you're countrymen with each other. And I believe many of you will find that you're all Irish. I urge you to support the wow, sorry, it's the first one being on the opposition. The South has not abandoned the North. Thank you.
Give me a minute. I'm trying to think of something to say. Alright, so a couple of points of rebuttal to first on. I'd like to say Fianna Fáil, as much as a Republican party as North Korea would say they're democratic, or I'm a lefty, or I love the EU. It's just not true. The fact is, and this brings us on very nicely to what we're trying to elaborate here, it's not about if the Irish have deserted Northern Ireland. It's about why. That's the bigger point of this argument. Why has the Irish basically abandoned Northern Ireland? And the real answer is, who would want them? They cost 12 billion quid a year. That's more than we actually give to the EU. They cost us more than what we've just voted to leave, at a rate of 52% of the entire country. That's the reason why they don't want them. They're too expensive, they cause too much trouble, they're too noisy, and they're just too damn difficult. That's the reason why. Regardless of what has actually happened, they will not take you because they don't want you. On that note. So look, now let's just talk about some of the evidence about how they're going about rejecting Northern Ireland. And I think it's really important that we start now and then go backwards, because I don't know what happened in 1922, because I wasn't alive. And in reality, what's going on right now with Brexit sort of sums up in my head what I've been reading since I came over here 5 years ago. And that is, all the Irish really care about is how much money they can make out of a Brexit deal. Having the trouble, causing the trouble that they're causing right now, sit down, having the negotiation regarding the border that they're having stands them the best chance of winning the most amount of banking industry from London, because the only other place that bankers that are based in London will live in Europe is Dublin. And they know that. So that's the reason why they're perfectly willing to sell out the North during a Brexit negotiation. And that's the reason why they're perfectly willing to risk a civil war in Northern Ireland, because they just want to nab British banking. Speak to bankers that work in central London right now and turn around and go, do you want to live in Frankfurt, Paris or Dublin? They'll tell you one city. No, Dublin. And that is what the trouble right now about Brexit is about. And they are holding out for the best possible deal that they can get, whilst they build enough buildings, enough flats, and enough business and enough building departments so that they can house the banking industry that we've got right now in London. That to me is selling out Northern Ireland. And that is the history of the North to Ireland. Let's just go back to 1922 for a minute. Who on earth would accept that deal? If somebody turned around to you and said,
I know that you think this is your house, but what we're going to do is you're going to have a vote on all the family members in your house. And whoever basically wants to stay in your house can stay in your house. And whoever doesn't want to stay in your house doesn't have to stay in your house. And then we'll take what we want and you can keep what you want. On that point, no, everybody is going to go, that's utter nonsense.
On that point,
go on, Sullivan.
It is utter nonsense, because that's really not comparable, even remotely. A country is much
in the most ridiculous terms how ridiculous taking that deal was. It was utter foolish. Do you really think at that time, I know we're going to have a county by county referendum and the Brits can keep what they want and Ireland can get what votes to become part of Ireland. No. Just accepting that deal is selling out Northern Ireland. They started off by selling out Northern Ireland. No, and all they have done since that point is sell out Northern Ireland. And that is basically the history of what's been going on now. Yeah, go on.
To come and to say that you didn't know anything about 1922. I could talk all day about that, and he did not sell it.
It was a joke I made when I don't know anything about 1922.
It's not a joke.
No, I know about 1922. I've read about it.
The point of the matter is right now is we're stuck in this situation whereby we are having a debate that people in this room, on this side of the house, genuinely believe that Ireland has sold out Northern Ireland. Russell spoke very eloquently, and so did Finn, about the attitude that some of the Irish people have. I don't know the statistics, because we haven't actually taken an entire picture of all the Irish people going, what do you think of Northern Ireland? But from the evidence that we've got, we know full well that when we get described as Northies, or the troublemakers, we know full well that the way that they perceive us is not in a warm, kind, friendly manner. That is not the sort of attitude that you have from a group of people that have not sold you out. That's what's happened. As has been said by both sides of the house, they don't want us, we don't want you, who wants you? That's the point. And that is the general attitude from that side of the house and from that side of the house. And all that shows is that the Irish have sold out Northern Ireland. It's not about if, this debate is about why, and that is basically what we've been arguing, because it's so much damning the evidence against the Irish in this one. I urge you to vote with the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President-elect. Okay, so to begin, I would like to really start as with I'll first tackle the proposition's main points, which I personally believe were pretty uninformed at best. People who claim to know nothing then went on to lecture us on their own opinions and outcomes of certain acts that happened throughout the last 100 years of this island. So to start off, we got to start with context of 1922 from the first speaker, but we never really understood we never got any real description. We got context of what happened, but we didn't get why, and that is obviously key to any political or historical debate. With regard to the second speaker, he believed, as he started, this is a deal for the people of the South, not the government, and that is key. But I don't agree with that at all. You said yourself that this was a cultural thing. But we say that this is a government thing. We're saying, how is the Republic of Ireland government sold out the North? And so I understand, just like any government cannot control the minds of their people. So we cannot then say the Republic of Ireland sold out on the North because the people of the South have forgotten about the North. They are not the same thing. Yes, sir.
But does not the mind of the people control the mind of government?
To a certain extent. I mean, I'd like to believe that, convincingly, but I actually don't think that's the case. In a democracy, that is the way it should be, but if we do look at governments all around the world, I really don't think that is how it works. Moving on then to his second point, he said about the opposition party, Sinn Féin, and all they do is oppose what the government says and stuff, and yeah, that's kind of the point of the opposition party, isn't it? So, I mean, I don't see why we're banning Sinn Féin or people before Belfast or anyone. That's kind of the point of having a relative opposition. No, you're okay, thanks. So, in terms of the big city complex, I believe that in any society, the big cities do kind of care less about the nationalistic thoughts anywhere in the world. You go to London, you ask them how they care about the deindustrialisation and poverty in the north. You go to Dublin and you can see the exact same thing. These are just big cities all over the world, and so I don't think we can look at people on the Irish circuit who debated from Dublin, which I agree with are sellouts, but we can't look at these people and say that they represent the whole of the country, because they don't.
On that point, sir.
No, you're fine. Yes, okay, so in many ways we are different. There's absolutely no doubt about that. I'm from the north. I'm a staunch nationalist Irishman. However, I agree that I am different from people in the south. I've been raised under a different education system, different governments. However, you still haven't told me why the south was sold out of the north. If we move on into the closing bit, Craig. So with regard to, you basically made an economics argument with regard to the south, and especially with regard to just Dublin. And so, with respect to the sort of conspiracy theories about house markets, which may or may not be valid, it's completely dodging the real question around nationalism, around security fears over the border, and this whole talk of houses going up in Dublin to afford banks and stuff, I think is a very niche, if not inaccurate point. So moving on to my own brave speakers on the opposition, who are actually based their own place. Mr. Thornton gave assurances through law, gave empirical evidence through law and steadfast commitment that the South has always engaged in the North since the partition in 1922. We have shown the House that the South, the Southern Government in Dublin has continually worked with the North and the British Government to create peace in the North.
Yes. Well, we talk about some empirical evidence since the beginning of the period from 1922 and partition until then, North America became a problem. There was not much in the way of intervention at all, considering we had what was basically unionist oligarchy control in the gerrymandered borders. The South had very little to say in that regard. Then, in fact, the British.
Yes, if you will let me, I'm going to brush on that a wee bit later, but the only thing I would say about that is the South was an extremely poor and politically minute country, whereas it doesn't really the kind of power that it does today, as we've seen throughout the Brexit negotiations. With regard to, yes, the first speaker mentioned the Sunningdale Agreement and the lack of it, or the Good Friday Agreement. And I think this is what this debate fundamentally boils down to. In 1998, there was an agreement that both the British government and the Republic of Ireland, through law, agreed to give up their aims of foreign policy over the North and let us, the people, decide whether we should join the South or not. And through that law, to create peace, which has, by and large, been very successful, one of the most successful peace agreements in the history of international conflict resolution. Through that agreement, we can self-determine whether we want to join the South. That isn't a no thing. You didn't have the courage to take one of mine, so I got this mission. So, with regard to that, we have self-determination. They didn't sell us out. In fact, they saved us from an inevitable conflict that was taking place for 30 years. Think about the amount of lives through brave politicians in the South, in England, in London, in the North, who all came together and said, we're not selling out. We're actually sticking up for our people, for our citizens, making them safe, and letting them determine their own self-determination. By which case, if the South, or if the North were to say we want to join the South, then the South said they'll absolutely engage in that debate. And just because it hasn't, they fundamentally aren't allowed to debate. That's the point in the agreement, because they have to be bipartisan. That's not selling out. It's sticking up for your people and letting them decide on their own terms when they want. So that's longer than perspective. Right, so I believe ideology is a powerful and indeed dangerous thing. It creates both unity and partition. As we have seen with regard to this whole debate, I feel like the fact that we even call ourselves Southerners, Northerners, the North, the South, shows that we haven't sold out. Shows that we're not Northern Irish people or Republic of Ireland people. I call people from the South because they are Irish people just like myself, and they believe the exact same, or else they would call me a Northern Irish person. But they don't. They have not sold out. I do not believe that. And I think that any amount of romanticism on this side regard that sort of language is just inaccurate. Let's flip the debate. Has Northern Ireland sold out on the South? Can anyone in here really tell me what's going on in Southern Dublin? Just like they don't know about what's going on in Northern Dublin. It's essentially just two different systems, and you obviously have to take the one that you're governed by and try and at least see around it before you go to other places. Comrades of the House, the proposition has given me nothing but speculation and old wives' tales. The opposition have told you through empirical evidence and a minor bit of romanticism why the Republic of Ireland has not sold out. This meaning of selling to actually get something in return for what you have done. Forgetting about the North does not mean you have sold out, and on this basis you must oppose the motion. Thank you.
Fine speech, and if we can have one more round of applause for all of our speakers again. So, as the hour gets late, I'll invite us all to what will be a relatively brief round of questions, going first to the proposition. If anyone has any questions for them, raise your hand. Mr. Patton.
Mr. Mayor, in your speech you said that the Liberal Party in the South has abandoned Northern Ireland. Yet, if memory serves, Fine Gael, they're both the same, who cares, are currently in talks with the SDLP to merge. Who cares? Are currently in talks with the SDLP to merge about joint candidates. Or, well, same party, who cares? The question is then, is this showing a complete apathy, or is it actually trying to take part in Northern Irish politics?
The opinions expressed by Russell Mayer during this speech do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Russell Mayer. As we saw with Killian when he raised the ROI regarding this particular issue, I very much said in response, I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe this sort of behaviour when I see it, because all of their expressions have up until now been in the service. So to see whether or not they will engage beyond their usual service, I shall be very happy.
And anyone from the opposition to respond? Mr. Thornton.
As Secretary of the SCPD, I can't comment on the matter because of the note that the matter is complete speculation. But what I will say is, I raised the fall issue of getting from up to the north as a symbol of Irish governments making a mark in Northern Ireland. As much as it pains me, all we have to do is look at Sinn Féin and the rise of Sinn Féin. Going on a United Ireland ticket, and a United Ireland ticket is what they have as their main priority, and yet they are rising both here and in the Republic of Ireland. So I move away from the three-part issue immensely, but Sinn Féin, that's what I need to know.
And now if there are any questions for the opposition. Miss Fleming.
Does that not show that the South sold out the North? The fact that they got their independence at the expense of Northern Ireland.
And Mr. O'Neill to respond.
It is difficult. Again, it's hard to get over yesterday, and I said here before it's hard to comment. What some people really forget about is the 1914 law in Cornwall, which is basically during the First World War, Protestant units in the North accumulated an immense amount of evidence from Britain and completely get a problem of evidence in the North with Catholic power. The idea was that all our votes said that we should be in any country, and the politicians in the North effectively mandated the Parliament to each country to carry out the law, and so the politicians had to get it. So I do understand there's an immense amount of problem celebrated, but no one can underestimate the division of the Protestant units in the North and
And if anyone from the proposition would like to respond?
Well, firstly, to answer Mr. Fleming's question, yes. Secondly, to address Mr. O'Neill's comments, I think really the best response would be to paraphrase Edmund Blackadder. The partition of Ireland happened because it would have been far too much effort not to partition Ireland. It was just like we don't want to deal with that. And it was not meant to succeed. It wasn't really meant to fail. It was just meant to be there for a few years until possibly unite the whole thing under the common plan.
And if there are any abstaining points on the motion, Mr. Murray.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would like to draw the attention of both sides to recent affairs around the turmoil that we've seen in terms of getting Stormont back up and running in Northern Ireland. And what I would say is we're seeing a situation at the minute, we're seeing a situation where the British government, there are steps that they can take in order to expedite that process, but which they're not taking because the DUP are in their pockets. So that's things like bringing forward legislation on Irish language reform, which is a sticking point in the talks process, and appointing an independent mediator to the talks process. Now, the Irish government, of course, has powers under the Good Friday Agreement as a guarantor. However,
You're going to have to ask you for this brief, Mr. Murray.
Yeah, sorry. The Irish government has powers under the Good Friday Agreement as a guarantor, and, in a way, it has the power to sort of twist the British government's elbow in this, but it's just choosing not to. Does either side believe that there is a case to be made that they're choosing not to exercise this power because they want to see Sinn Féin squirm, essentially, for their own political gain?
Mr. Nicholas.
I'm sure why not.
No, I absolutely don't think so.
We're flying, sure. And if there are any more questions for the proposition, Mr. Sullivan, HLM.
So, given that your point is obviously the South has not done enough, therefore they have sold the power, what do you believe that the Southern government should have done or could not be doing to not have sold out and be selling out more?
And Dr. Miller to respond.
Okay, I think Con actually helped our argument here when he basically said that because the Protestants in Northern Ireland had the monopoly on weapons, they agreed to partition. That's not, I'm reciting what Oppa said here, and that is the actual definition of selling somebody out. Leaving your kin under British rule because you're too scared to engage them because they have a bigger gun or a few more guns than you is the definition of selling somebody out. He's put that to you. That's what they could have done. They could have dealt with this problem back in 1922, but they decided to be scared. And basically right now, in terms of the EU, selling out the EU again, they needed Messrs. Tusk and Juncker to hold their hands, basically have a little squabble with the United Kingdom. They could actually be doing something to try and reform an Irish country, but what they're doing right now is not that. So they're 2 points where they could have actually done something more rather than setting out Northern Ireland. His words, not mine.
Not been really creative today at all, and I still have my opinion for the opposition. We are not talking about culture. We're not talking about speculation either about what the Irish people think. No. And to build on what Crowley said about the EU, the Irish government is a co-guarantor in this part of this island, and it will remain a co-guarantor for the Irish people of this part of this island. So it is protecting the interests when it turns around and says that there will be no hard border on this island. And when Greg talks about the English people coming over here and relocating the British banks employees relocating over here. Of course they're going to come over here. A highly skilled workforce, an English-speaking workforce, and a highly paid workforce coming over. They're not going to send them to Poland.
at the meeting. Are there any questions for the opposition? Any at all? Mr. Eggman.
Just a couple of points to kind of pick up on. So we've heard that you're not interested in what the people think. You're not interested in what culture is across the border. In this debate, that's not the question about who's selling out. The question is government. And to support that, you've cited a party that's not in government, which is extending its range to the north, pointing out the fact that independent government in the Dáil at the moment, not Fianna Fáil. And in that respect, the only person that you've cited so far is a minister making a promise that there won't be any hard border in the north without citing any evidence of that actually being taken. So just put that to you.
First of all, as I said, Fianna Fáil are the longest serving party in government in the South. Second of all, Micheál Martin, the leader of Fianna Fáil, has also come out and said that it is his intention that there will be no hard border, and his shadow government also stand by that. I have voted Fianna Gael because they are the government at the moment, and as the government of Ireland, regardless of what party it is, haven't been should be in some way, that they are the full guarantors of that agreement. So regardless of the party, they have a responsibility upon this party.
Mr. Pickwood makes fair points. What God's name is this? The South has done really nothing substantial or meaningful to the North. On the point of the alleged merger between Fianna Fáil and the SDLP, if Fianna Fáil were at all serious about engaging in politics in the North, why is it all saying they merged with the SDLP? As I said in my speech there, you count the number of political leaders in the South who were, in the last 100 years, who had any serious plan towards the North. And that's John Redden, Michael Collins. That's about where the similarity between those two end. Very different approaches. Charlie Haughey, Gareth Fitzgerald, again, they sort of reflect the other two, and then Bertie Ahern. They're these like three high points of home rule just after the Civil War, before Collins was shot in that devil era, and ruined the entire country for a few years. And then Fitzgerald and Haughey, again, very different approaches, and then Fianna Fáil support for New Labour and the Clinton administration, but then they learned from the mistakes of the past, and rather than trying to impose peace on Northern Ireland, they backed up the starting in 1968 foundation of Carrymila.
Right. And finally, we shall take one more abstaining point on the motion if anyone has any they'd like to present. Or if they want. Mr. Hubble.
Right. From my awareness, no one here was alive in 1922. And I would like to stop going on about things you clearly don't know about, for you were not born then.
Rebecca to respond.
As a junior, we are three people with a deep shared history in Wigan, and I feel that I, as a junior, have imparted a great amount of my knowledge onto the opposition just by being here tonight. So I reject your claims, sir. But ultimately, through the eternal immortality of my effort, I feel we're able to talk passionately, with dignity, and with intelligence and wit upon this subject, that if maybe you could trim off the ponytail, you too would be able to appreciate.
So, I feel as though Mr. Hubble may have been putting upon our big toes with his particular point. However, and I can agree with him, of course, I personally subscribe to the worldview that you are all robots and that the world does not exist. And in fact, I am the single only sentient conscious human being put here for the sake of a cruel social experiment by some invisible alien race. However, given that, I believe it is perfectly possible for circumstance. However, for the sake of argument, I am playing into the debate in order to play into the whims of my alien overlords and to make sure that they do not hurt me with the nasty zappy rays as they do in my dreams every night. This is a serious point after Mr. Miller essentially wants us to talk about the fact that Sinn Féin are effectively rejected because they are, as far as we're concerned, the Liberal Democrats of the South, which is a sad position to hold.
I believe that's a good point to wrap up the question, folks.
And it's at that point of the evening where we're going to call to a vote. Now, I'll remind you all again, this is our binding vote, which is on speaker ability. Not which side we feel most convinced by, or what our personal opinions are, but the side on which we believe that the speakers spoke the best. So, I'll first call that anyone who believes that the proposition spoke best to raise their hand now and say aye. Aye.
Just remember, you can only vote if you are a member, unless we're changing.
I forgot that bit. Yes. Get your membership cards out if you have them, or if I trust you as a human.
Well, in that case, we're having a card.
Well,
Mr. President, can I point out what Mr. Sullivan's got in his hand?
I can't see that. I'm terrible.
It's a couple of
I'll take that.
What have you got?
13? 14. And all those who believe that the opposition spoke best this evening, please raise your hands and say nay.
Everyone get what?
And all those who believe that both sides spoke equally well or equally terribly, or wish to have absolutely no opinion, please raise your hands and give some sort of expression of not caring. Yep. Wait, 9. Read the vote back to me, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. President, for the last time, I was a very, very close vote. 14 votes to the proposition, 13 to the opposition, and 9 abstentions.
Well, you heard it there. The proposition has it. The proposition has it. And before I adjourn the meeting, may we give a special round of applause to our Secretary, Mr. Peter Dunn, who has read the minutes dutifully all year, given them, taken them, and is now here doing his secretarial duties for the final time. And so, for anyone who cares as little about their exams as I do, we'll be adjourning to woodworkers after.